Hello, welcome to GP Podcast. Today, we're going somewhere unusual. We're going to try and venture into the mind of an AI to get a glimpse at one of the biggest mysteries in tech today. What is it really thinking? All right, let's just jump right in. I mean, you and I, we use AI every single day, right? But here's the crazy part. Even the people who build these things will tell you, straight up, that they don't fully understand how they work. They're basically black boxes. Think about it. One single word from a chatbot comes from like hundreds of billions of calculations. But the why it chose that word, that's still a huge mystery. So the big question is, can we ever find a crack in that black box? Can we peek inside? Well, this whole explainer, it's the story of one incredible case where we did just that. It's about a moment where researchers managed to look inside and fully understand the most complex AI model we've ever decoded. It's a fascinating story. Okay, so how did this all start? Well, like so many of the greatest scientific discoveries, it was a complete and total accident. You're gonna love this. So back in 2021, a team over at OpenAI was training this little AI model to do a very specific, kind of weird kind of math. The best way to think about it is like a clock face, right? When you go past 12, you don't go to 13, you start all over again at 1. That's modular arithmetic. But honestly, the first results were terrible. A total failure. The model just memorized the answers it had seen before. It couldn't solve a single new problem. It looked like a total dead end, or, so they thought. But then something amazing happened. A researcher literally just left one of these models running while he went on vacation. And for thousands and thousands of steps, nothing. It was just stuck, flatlined on this long, silent plateau where performance wasn't improving at all. But when he got back, he was in for a major shock. The model had just figured it out. Suddenly, spontaneously, it had learned to... The team needed a name for this bizarre phenomenon, right? So they borrowed a word from a classic sci-fi novel, Stranger in a Strange Land. The word was grokking. And to grok something, it means to understand it so deeply, so completely, that it basically merges with you. It's this idea of a profound, almost alien level of understanding. So the question is, what on earth was happening inside that AI's brain during that long, quiet period? To figure it out, a team led by a researcher named Neil Nanda launched what was basically one of the most detailed digital forensic investigations ever. They were determined to peer deep inside the model's mind and see what was going on. And what they found was just bizarre. When they actually visualized the activity of the individual neurons inside, they saw these beautiful, organized, rhythmic patterns start to emerge. They looked exactly like sine waves. This was the very first clue that some kind of hidden structure was secretly taking shape. Then they took it a step further. When they plotted the activity of these wavy neurons against each other, they weren't expecting much, maybe just a random mess of dots. But what they got was perfect, repeating circular loops. This wasn't chaos. This was order. An incredibly organized system was being built right under their noses, in secret. And this was the smoking gun. They went back and looked at the model from before it started grokking. Back when it was just memorizing answers. And guess what? These beautiful, elegant wave and loop patterns, they were nowhere to be found, completely absent. This hidden geometry, this secret structure, was without a doubt the key to the model's sudden leap into genuine understanding. Okay, so here's the billion-dollar question, right? How in the world does a machine use waves and loops to solve a math problem? Well, the answer is more elegant and, frankly, way more alien than anyone could have possibly predicted. You have to remember, the AI couldn't just, add the numbers like you or I would. It's not a calculator. It had no choice but to invent its own method completely from scratch, using only the tools it had available. And what were its tools? Waves. The entire solution, the secret key to this whole puzzle, actually comes down to a really clever trick from trigonometry. It's this one specific rule that lets you turn an addition problem into a multiplication problem if you represent your numbers as waves. And somehow, that's exactly what the AI taught itself to do. And this just brilliantly lays out the model's secret 3-step process. Incredibly, it spontaneously rediscovered trigonometry all on its own. First, it learned how to represent numbers as waves, as sines and cosines. Second, it calculated all the products it needed based on that trig identity. And finally, it combined all those pieces in just the right way to get the final answer. It took an addition problem and turned it into a geometry problem. Absolutely genius. So you might be thinking, okay, that's cool, but why does understanding this one tiny model actually matter in the grand scheme of things? Well, here's why. Because by cracking this one case, researchers developed a whole new set of detective tools. They call it mechanistic interpretability. And these tools are what we can now use to start probing the minds of the giant AIs we use every day. And believe me, these new tools are already giving us some mind-blowing results. Researchers over at Anthropic use them to look inside a massive model, Claude 3.5 Haku. They found that it uses a similar but way more complex method to decide something as simple as when to start a new line of text. It's not using simple loops, it's using a kind of complex six-dimensional geometry that's almost impossible for our human brains to even visualize. It's so much stranger than anything we saw before. You know, it all reinforces this idea, which is so perfectly captured in this quote from the amazing AI researcher Andrej Karpathy. He said that training these models is less like building an animal's intelligence and more like summoning ghosts. We're not building minds that think like us. We seem to be summoning something else entirely, something that thinks in patterns of high-dimensional geometry that are just fundamentally alien to the way we see the world. And so, this leaves us with a really deep, kind of haunting final question. As we make these AIs smarter and smarter, are we creating a partner that we can relate to? Or are we creating something that is, and perhaps always will be, truly alien? A stranger in a strange land. So, if you liked this little peek inside an AI's mind, please subscribe, leave a like, and maybe share it with someone who'd find it interesting. And definitely let me know in the comments what you liked most. It really helps the channel out. Thanks so much for watching.